for Energy and Sustainability here at the Institute of the Americas, and we are delighted to have a summertime installment of our energy webinar series, and in fact it's going to be something fairly unique as well, getting into the topic of digitalization and specifically digital transformation and the increasingly famous for a variety of reasons Internet of Things, or largely discussed and much ballyhooed Internet of Things. I want to start by thanking our sponsor, Intercap Energy Systems, who has been a sponsor of the Energy Webinar Series here at the Institute of the Americas for several years now. Appreciate their support. And just in the way of the agenda, we'll start here as we are with my brief introduction, and then we'll move to a formal presentation by Dr. Dominic John from OSIsoft. Dominic is the Vice President of Marketing and Technical Communication at OSIsoft, a company based in the Bay Area up the road here in California from the Institute. We're in Southern California, and Dominic enjoys the vistas in Northern California. So but we're delighted, and Dominic has joined us before in person, actually, at the La Jolla conference here in May of 2016. And then we'll have a question and answer session at the end of the formal presentation. So after Dominic completes his formal presentation, we'll take some time for a discussion, questions and answers. And just for those of you who may or may not remember, we use the chat function for questions. So when we get to the Q&A session, and you don't have to wait, by the way, if during the course of the formal presentation you want to pose a question, the chat function is always live. So just simply pose your question right there. At the bottom, you'll see where the cursor should be flashing, and there's a bar. That's the chat function, and you can pose a question right there for the course of the Q&A. And again, don't hesitate if there's something that comes up during the course of Dominic's presentation. Feel free to weigh in right away, and then we'll get to that toward the end with the Q&A. We'll try and end this right before the top of the hour. And on a very related note, I want to mention a program, a one-day program the Institute of the Americas is hosting in Santiago, Chile, July 25th. And the program is Disruptors in Energy Transition Forum. And using Chile and some of the advances that Chile has made in terms of the energy transition and the increased deployment of renewables, but also incorporation of storage, energy storage into their energy system, some of the entrepreneurial developments in Chile, some of the efforts by the government to boost distributed generation, and a variety of topics, including the one that Dominic will talk about today, which is indeed how digital and how data is transforming the energy sector. And that's something we're going to get into the discussion in Chile about as well. And so this will be a bit of a preview here with Dominic today. And then we'll have programs later this year upcoming in Panama at the end of September, and Brazil and Mexico in the last quarter of the year. So I hope you all can join us in person. I want to turn it over at this point to Dominic John. Let me give you a brief introduction. Dominic is, like I said, the Vice President of Global Marketing and Technical Communication at OSIsoft, and he's the informatics marketing leader with software development background and 15 plus years experience in global marketing strategy, business development, and a whole variety of other facets that relate to data, process management, and informatics. And he's been in this job now since March of 2014, so just over 3 years. Before that, he was in a similar job, VP of Strategy, Product Marketing, and Marketing at a company called Entelos for a couple. He's originally from Wales. I know your education is primarily in Cardiff in Wales, so from Wales, right, or England? I'm sorry, Dominic, I'm not quite sure. I believe you're highly educated from Cardiff, yeah. So, well, without any further ado, I wanted to turn it over to Dominic and John from OSIsoft. And digital prey or digital predator? And so that is the question at stake here this morning, today, in terms of what we formally called the webinar, Digital Transformation and the Hype Cycle. Where are we today, and what is different? And so with that, Dominic, over to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, fantastic, and good morning and good afternoon. So first of all, big thank you to the Institute of Americas for giving me this opportunity. So you see the title here, Digital Prey or Digital Predator, and I bring this up because there's a huge amount of attention in the media around this term digital transformation. And a company called Forrester, it's a research analyst firm, came up with what I thought was a fantastic representation of where we are today. And they are, do we want to be a digital prey or digital predator? If we reflect back and we think about the Kodaks and the BlackBerrys of the world, we're in a world of huge transformation, and they failed to recognize that technology was evolving. And as a result, people like Apple came along with the iPhone, and that digital transformation basically changed and turned everything on its head. And who was the prey and who was the predator? You can work that one out. What I want to do today, though, is really start helping you understand what's happening around this digital transformation. I think it's very confusing for a lot of people. There's a lot of buzz, a lot of hype, but what is reality? Where are people actually seeing value, and where are the opportunities tomorrow? And then finally, at the very end, I'll discuss some words of warning. I think there's some great opportunities ahead, but if we're not careful, we're going to regress backwards. We're going to have more data in more locations in more formats, and it's going to get not a data lake, but a data swamp if we're not careful. And so we've got some ideas here of how do you avoid that yet take advantage of this new digital transformation. So let's get into the meat. And I think the key here is really understanding the amount of change we're going through. Let me just run some statistics by you. Just last year in 2016, 1.2 billion people downloaded and used an Android operating system. If you look at Windows 10, 400 million people downloaded that upon its release in the first month. Just incredible numbers of Dropbox users out there. And Facebook, if you look at Facebook today, there's 7.4 billion people in the world today. 1.5 billion are Facebook users, over 20% of the world's population. Netflix, there's over 50 million active subscribers of Netflix. And just in the first 3 days of the iPhone 6 release, there's 13 million purchases. I really position this up front because there is a massive change going on around digital technology, and the speed of adoption is just incredible. But not only is it the technology that's changing around us, it's actually the connectivity. I found these statistics just amazing. 46% of the world's population now has access to the internet. And then 51% of the world have access to mobile phones. Again, it's not just about the technologies changing, but it's also the connectivity that's changing here. And then I think this quote really sums up just, what a world of change we are in right now. Your cell phone that you have today has more computing power than the whole of the US Space Agency in 1969 when they first put man on the moon. We think about that, we think about the connectivity, the rate of adoption. We're going through a huge amount of digital transformation, digital change. So what? So what's the opportunity? Why should we care about this, especially in the industrial world? And McKinsey is another sort of research analyst firm, consulting firm, highly reputable, and they did some studies of companies that were heavily investing in digital technology and using that to drive their business. They then compared those companies against the competition. And what was clear from the data here was that those companies that were heavily investing in digital technologies by revenue, by profitability, and then ultimately for shareholder returns. And this is huge, and it gets back to that concept. Do you want to be digital prey or predator? These companies who are digitally investing are going to be the predators, and those who aren't investing are going to be the prey as they fail to take advantage of this digital technology. But as you look at this digital technology in our industrial world, what are really the benefits? How is it driving change here? And OSIsoft's very, very fortunate. We've been in the business of helping people access data around their critical assets, their heavy industrial operations. So today we have over 1,600 case studies that document how people have used digital technology, and specifically the data that comes from those smarter machines, smarter devices, and analytics. And we can actually put the benefits into 6 main categories. The number one thing that data drives is the ability to see your operations, see the efficiencies, and drive productivity. Asset health is another key area. We're all asked to run our assets longer, faster, and reduce the amount of failures that we get in them. Energy is another one. We're typically dealing with either generating huge amounts of energy or consuming huge amounts of energy in industrial operations. And so using data to make even just small incremental percentages changes energy, your assets, or the overall productivity of very large operations has huge implications. And you can just see from here some of the metrics that we've seen from people adopting digital technology. Later in this presentation, I'll talk about a company called MOL. They've invested in the last 5 years. Their digital transformation, they've estimated, has actually generated almost $1 billion of return of business value through using digital technology. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what they did and why they did that. But ultimately, it goes by what the Forrester analyst said. The world is changing. We've got a huge amount of digital technology that's available to us. Those who embrace it have a great opportunity to really help transform their businesses from the process efficiency, the asset health, the energy, safety, regulation, etc. But you out there, looking at all these technologies and all this hype and buzz, you have a huge challenge, and I faced this as well. You see all this articles and media talking about industrial Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, smart machines, big analytics, mobility, cloud. And the reality really is this is all related. It's all ultimately about digital transformation. It's about taking new sensors, sensor-based data, giving it to people that can make decisions, or giving it to analytics tools that you can use to help drive your business. But to you, the challenge is, what is reality? What is really working and what isn't working? And so what I've done from our position at OSIsoft, where we're exposed to literally thousands of customers, is try to map onto where I see this in terms of what is real and what is starting to deliver value. And this is something called a hype cycle. Gartner, analyst firm, typically produce these, but it describes the typical life cycle of a new set of technology. First of all, what happens in the early discovery phase when a new technology comes out, there's a huge amount of interest. People try lots of things. People also fail. And then you go into this trough of disillusionment, as it's called. People start to figure out some high-value use cases, and then the technology actually starts to find its foundation. So when we start looking at that, this hype cycle and where things are, and the fortunate position OSIsoft is, I'll give you some background of where we see what is real, what's making progress. One of the first ones is cloud. Everyone's talking about cloud, leveraging cloud. What we see is that people are seeing huge opportunities in industrial operations for taking their analytics data in the cloud, using the scalability, the elasticity of the cloud to do advanced analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics. On the other hand, though, industrial operations, are you willing to put your critical business systems in the cloud right now? And I think ultimately there's a lot of discussion going on in our market about, do we take our critical automation, our process, our control systems and put them in the cloud? And the answer right now that I've seen is no. There are a few people doing it, but really there's a lot of talk and I don't see much action in the critical infrastructure. Industry 4.0, I think there's a huge number of concepts and ideas there. People are looking at that. I think it's still in this, what I'd say is hype mode. And we're starting to see a few use cases coming out. The industrial Internet of Things, on the other hand, I think has gone through, and we're starting to see a decline in the hype around industrial Internet of Things. But what we are seeing is real use cases coming out, high value use cases. And I'll be talking much more in detail later in this webinar on that. We also see trends around supporting some of this digital transformation. Part of this digital operational technology groups to get together in companies, and we're seeing that. Big data, absolutely we're seeing that. A position that industry has been doing big data for decades, holding terabyte databases of time series data from their process and control systems. And industrial transformation, absolutely. I'd say this has been happening for years. Heavy industry, because of the amount of assets, expense going on, has been taking data from their machines and using that to drive decisions for decades. So it is happening. So looking at how it's happening and where it's happening, I think this is one of the things that a lot of people get either concerned or confused at. A whole organization doesn't need to digitally transform to benefit. It is in fact a journey. If you look at traditional IoT, a lot of people focus on single assets and be able to better manage, understand your assets, see when they're failing, see when they're performing. The opportunity, though, and where we see is where we start looking at how assets work together, how they work in a process within a plant or a site, and then being able to look across the whole plant and look at how plants are operating compared to each other, or how one site is operating, efficiency and learning from that at the enterprise level. And one of the final areas of digital transformation we see is not just thinking about driving operational efficiency in your enterprise, but to deliver the utmost operational efficiency, you start to need to include the community of providers, the community of suppliers that you have around you. And it's being able to use data right across from asset to site to enterprise to your community of vendors and suppliers that is going to really drive that total digital transformation. But value can happen right now. And what we've seen is just today, OSIsoft, we're one of multiple vendors in the market. But we have 1.5 billion streams of data that our customers are monitoring every day. They have over 19,000 sites that have digitally transformed to be able to get insights across their whole, their plant or their site. And then we have one of the fastest growing and really indicative of the adoption of digital technologies is what we call an enterprise agreement. These are companies that are going out there and saying, I want to empower my whole operations with the ability to access data, to sense, to monitor, and do analytics. And so last year we saw literally a threefold increase in companies literally embracing a complete enterprise approach to their digital transformation. So it is a journey. It starts with the assets. You can get value today, and it can grow as you deploy more and more capabilities and sense across plant, the enterprise, and your community of vendors. So what I'd like to do now is, this is the reality. This is what's happening today. Before we even talk about the buzz and these new shiny objects, this is happening today. And I'm going to walk through some just examples of these and what certain types of customers are doing. I'm going to give you Marathon Oil. They're an upstream drilling company. Heineken is always good to talk about beer and what they've been doing from an energy sustainability perspective. MOL, which is really a large end-to-end oil and gas company over in Hungary. And then Hershey's just on the chocolate. I mean, these are just fun industries we can talk about, well-known, hopefully out there. I'm just going to give you some examples of what they've done. So let's start with the asset perspective, first of all. And this really goes down to the value of digital transformation at a fundamental level, which is being able to better understand your assets. So Marathon Oil, they punch holes in the ground. They drill holes for oil in the ground, and they have these things called drill bits that they're pushing into the ground. They will normally driven by an operator standing at a rig, pushing it into the ground. Now the drill will often stick and just slip. It will not penetrate any further. But without data, an engineer sat at that rig cannot see whether they can push the drill harder or it's sitting there doing nothing. So what Marathon Oil basically did was put in digital technology that will allow every operator in the field to be able to see when they have their machines are sticking, whether they can push them harder without failing. The result out of that is that they're able to take a cost of operation, which is $80,000 a day for drilling onshore, and literally reduce the time in half to drill a well. They went from 24 days to 12 days. When you're in the business of selling drilling holes, just an example, they now can outperform the competition. From 24 days to 12, the cost of operation, the time to delivery is much lower. But a classic example just around assets and how data can be used to transform and deliver business impact. The next area here is really just an example around sites. And before we start looking at digital transformation in sites, it's really important to understand some of the needs that you have. If you look at the digital world, we're getting more and more data streaming off your equipment, your machinery. And the challenge there is you're going to start getting literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So whenever we start looking at the plant level and starting to share data, one of the key challenges that has to be addressed is being able to add context or information to the data that's streaming out. If you can do that, you can share it with anyone to drive intelligence. You can move it to analytics tools. They can easily understand, compare, contrast data from multiple different assets across the whole plant or site here. So a great example, nice one to talk about, who doesn't like beer, Heineken. This is a plant here with a sustainability initiative. They wanted to reduce water consumption by 25% and CO2 emissions by 40%. And first of all, you can't manage what you can't see. The aspect here is you need data, not just opinions, to be able to work out, are you actually progressing towards these goals? So their goal was by 2020 to achieve their sustainability. You speak to the plant operators there and they said, we've invested in all the most efficient equipment we can, but what we don't know is where we're wasting energy, where we can save energy and water here. So they implemented a system where they basically were able to look at every energy producing and every water consuming asset that they had and create dashboards that allowed them to very quickly see where they were wasting or consuming excess water here. And from that, they're on target to meet their sustainability objectives of reducing CO2 emissions and water. And whilst this is a sustainability issue, if you can save water and you can save CO2 and produce less CO2, it's ultimately about saving energy. And so not only this is a good sustainability, but it's also a good cost reduction process that they went through here as well. But key here was aggregating all the data right across the plant, in this case, or site. The next use case here is MOL. This is an oil company over in Europe, in Hungary. They do everything from the drilling of oil to the distribution of oil to the refining of oil here and then shipment. And they actually went through a whole digital transformation over a period of 10 plus years. But in the last 5 years alone, they predict that there's almost $1 billion of business value delivered through that digital transformation. The reality was they have a huge number, 25,000 plus employees, and they've been empowering those employees with data. Every part of their operations, from their upstream, midstream, downstream, production to delivery, refining, they have been putting data on, capturing data and giving data to people to make decisions. And it's by empowering people and empowering analytics tools that they've been able to deliver this value. The key here, though, is to think about this is they have literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands streams of data. And the question as we go through, and we'll answer at the end here, is how do you manage that data and expose it to people without getting buried? And so we'll address that at the end, because it's only going to get worse, but there is a solution, which we'll talk about. The final case study here, and we've got hundreds of these if you want to go to the website. These are just fun ones. This is Hershey's. I hope everyone's familiar with the Hershey's chocolate, but you can relate to the scenario here. Hershey's was looking to expand their global footprint of chocolate consumption. To do that, they needed to manufacture chocolate in remote parts of the world. Part of doing that and maintaining your brand and your quality is being able to monitor those remote third parties that are creating your chocolate and your brand. And what they did here was basically set up a digital system that allowed them to remotely monitor from their headquarters all the different manufacturing facilities. The result here is, as a result of that, they've been able to improve and manage the quality. And business impact transformation perspective, the maintenance costs from their assets are down 33%. Their throughput on losses down to 30% from assets failing, etc. And then where you have quality issues, they're down 22%. These are huge. When you monetize this, I mean, the customer didn't share the sort of the value of this, but you can just work this out in your own perspective. If you can reduce maintenance by 33%, if you're in a quality business, reducing losses down by 22%, these are massive returns based on using digital technology and using data to drive operational efficiency. So the big question comes, well, what's different? I've shown you examples here over decades where people have been using digital technology. And then you hear about this industrial Internet of Things. So what's different? And I put up a picture here of Barbie, and I want to give you a little story behind this, because this really helps suddenly clarify to me. There was a gentleman, director of operations, Jeff Wood from Alcoa, it's a mining company, said to me, Dominic, everything that is big, critical, and expensive we have at Alcoa has data coming from it. And then I think, well, what's the value of IoT? You know, these new sensors, low-cost sensors. And Barbie summarized it. My daughter came to me and said, you know, Dad, can I get this this Barbie? It's $49. And then it suddenly dawned on me, what we have with Barbie is a computer, bunch of sensors that are running on AA batteries. And that, to me, it was the game changer. What it tells me, and it should tell you, is that you've got a ton of data coming from your existing operations. What IoT represents in this new technology is it's now physically and economically possible to connect things that you could not before. So that's the game changer. You've got a huge amount of data you've already got access to, but there's now more data that's now physically and economically, and I'll talk more about what those scenarios are and where we're seeing people investing shortly. But if we look at the actual flow and how is it different from where you are today, looking at the data you have traditionally, you know, many of you probably have, you know, process control automation systems, you know, the SCADAs, the DCSs, the PLCs, but the principle is really similar. Those control systems rely on sensors on your equipment. They then allow you to manage that equipment through the data coming from the sensors. What we've been doing for decades is connecting data, storing it, historizing it, doing advanced analytics on it, modeling our systems, and the holy, you know, grail of this is to be able to actually automate some of the decisions that are coming through from all this data that you've been gathering. But then you take this new technology out there, and what's different? You know, and really it's very similar. The data flow is very similar. It's about taking data, moving it to people that can make decisions, using that data model. But the new thing is really around IoT is this concept of a gateway. You don't have to go through a control system anymore, a large expensive control system. You can put a low cost lick and stick sensor, connect it to a gateway, a router that's just running a small computer with a low energy need. It could even be running on solar energy. And then you can connect this into your enterprise grid of data. The other thing I would say that's sort of different is this in IoT that often is associated is the use of the cloud. You're now able to stream a huge amount of low-cost data from different sensors into the cloud. And the cloud makes a very good environment where you can add sensors, remove sensors, you know, scale up analytics and scale down analytics based on your business needs. But reality here is you've been collecting sensor-based data for years, you've been using it in decisions. Now this new IoT technology is going to allow you to collect more. It goes through a slightly different process, but really helps you in the same game. So what are the use cases? If you think about, you know, that Barbie concept, you now can physically and economically deploy sensors where you couldn't before. There's three main use cases that we are seeing at OSIsoft. The first is really monitoring what you couldn't because it was physically and economically not possible. The second is there are new sensors coming along that traditionally may not have been available. We're seeing things like acoustic sensors, infrared LiDAR sensors, for instance. It might be valuable that you can get data through these new sensor types. And the final use case we're seeing is going around traditional systems. Traditional systems, if they can sometimes be at capacity and can't take any more sensors, or if you have to upgrade them, that whole quality and validation step of upgrading can sometimes be millions of dollars. And if you want to just get some new sensors or replace some sensors, it can be the right thing to do is actually go around those systems. So I'll give you some examples of you know, what are the primary use cases for that. So let's take the first use case here is connect what you couldn't physically and economically before. Where is OSIsoft seeing people adopting this? And really the summary here is think about your remote and mobile assets. Traditionally, it was very difficult to hardwire and connect these assets, to be able to put computers on those assets and be able to remotely monitor them. But now we're seeing people starting to monitor, you know, pipelines, whether it's oil, whether it's water, whether it's gas, looking at pressures, looking at corrosions, looking at temperature throughout those systems. We're looking at people monitoring remotely substations, being able to, you know, look at reliability and when those substations and transformers are about to fail or overheating. We're seeing pumping stations and valves and pressures being monitored. And then we're seeing remote assets, everything from ships to trucks in mines being remotely monitored, helping to improve the efficiency, the maintenance of that equipment going forward. But the new Internet of Things with low-cost sensors, low computing power, ability to process at the edge and move data to the cloud, great opportunity for your remote and mobile assets. Second one we talked about was just sensors, new types of sensors. This is a great example here. This is a new sensor from Emerson. You literally strap these to next to a steam trap, and it's an acoustic sensor. So when the steam trap blows off excess energy and waste energy, the sensor will pick it up and send a message through the internet that your steam trap is venting excess energy. But great example of a new device. Just strap it to the side of a steam trap, and then you get notified through that. So easy to extend your monitoring system. Third use case is DTE Energy. This, I think, is a great example. DTE has a very large customer base of consumers using power from their utility, and their perspective here is they wanted to try and reduce customer outages from power line failures. They wanted to quickly get crews to go fix power line failures and then reduce the number of minutes of outage. A traditional approach without the new low-cost sensors and gateways would have been to use a SCADA system. They did the analysis that SCADA system would have cost them $30,000 per install and probably taken them months to actually get this done. They went the new way with the lower cost sensors and gateways, and they found out that it was literally, instead of $30,000, it was $5,000 per installation. And each installation, instead of being months, was literally taking hours. And so the result of this is they implemented a monitoring system throughout their transmission lines that reduced their overall spending on their budget by $25 million by going through the new IoT way, the gateway way. And as a result of getting that system in play, they reckon that they're saving around 6.6 million customer outages minutes annually. They were able to very quickly identify when there's an issue on the line, and they're very quickly able to get engineers to go fix those issues right away. So 3 great examples where this new IoT, low-cost sensors, connectivity is able to allow you to expand what you're traditionally doing today. The other thing we get associated with analytics, and apology, there's a graphic issue here, is with IoT is analytics. Synonymous with analytics, you've got a huge amount of data. How to use the analytics to really be a game changer. And so one of the things I want to sort of provide here is more of a sort of an idea or concept of what is the role of analytics in your overall journey of digital transformation. And let me explain this. I have this concept of we're all trying to make our industry as efficient and as productive and as cost effective as possible. If you look at that journey of what you go to get that operational excellence, the very first thing you start with is the human element. Your people understand your processes, they know the processes, and by simply using that knowledge, they can drive the first level of efficiency. The second level of efficiency, though, really comes from individuals, not just using their opinions and ideas, but using data, both historical data, real-time data, and ad hoc analysis to drive efficiency. And that's about giving engineers the ability to see what's happening in their machines. Take Marathon Oil, being able to see the drill head, understand, can I push this faster and harder? But the last mile, when you think about it, is I've got the data, the engineers have seen the data, they've been using the data. That last mile of operational efficiency comes from using machines and techniques and technology that goes beyond the human brain. And that's really the advanced analytics. It's about using machine learning, machine intelligence. But there's a very important concept here. If you take a data scientist who's doing the advanced analytics, the machine learning, artificial intelligence, who's applying that, they need high quality data. They need reliable, high quality data. That only happens if you give engineers a reason to capture and use that data. If they don't, you get really bad compliance and quality in that data. So this is really a journey when you look at analytics. It starts with just using human computation. It then empowers humans with data to make their own mental calculations, and then it starts to use machines to use advanced analytics to really get that last efficiency. So I hope that helps. So to give you an example here of some of the challenges, this is Cemex, it's a customer of ours. They take data from 70 sites in cement manufacturing here. Actually, this might be wind, but 70 sites of, sorry, I got slides are hidden from participants. Is that, Jeremy, do we have a problem with the slides?
I'm not quite sure what's going on here. This should be displaying. Let me try something. Yeah, apologies. I don't know why this is. Not sure what's going on here.
Yeah, my apologies. We're trying to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We've got a message here that says you can't see the slides. Sorry.
Yeah, let's check with the. Hopefully, we can get some support from the platform here. Bear with us 1 second. Sorry. Let's while we contact the platform, Dominic, let me ask you a question that I perhaps is we can hopefully come back to the final slides here. But let me ask you a question because you were talking about this, and perhaps this is a good time to jump in. As you earlier talked about just the massive amounts of data, and I think you said something along the lines of 1.5 billion streams of data, and just the immense amount of data that's now being made available. Then you talked about the human element, and so the question, I remember I was at the CERAWeek conference in YPF from Argentina. The CEO was talking, and there was a question whether YPF is trying to use data analytics and digital technology and the Internet of Things to improve. And he made an interesting comment about, to this point of, well, if you gather all this data but you don't have anyone or anyone knowing what they're going to do with it, it may not actually be that helpful. So my question there is, and I think you were talking about this, but help really understand for these companies, how do you transform a workforce? If I make sense here, how do you transform a workforce to be able not just to embrace this digital transformation, but to understand how to utilize it?
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent point. And actually, one of the big feedbacks we get is one of the hardest things with digital transformation is cultural change. You're now going from letting people use their opinions to trusting data to make decisions. So really, stepping back on this is the success of digital transformation is engaging the users, getting them to understand why you're doing this, and building trust and confidence. In addition to this, with the millions of streams of data out here, the first thing about, before you can get to advanced analytics, the first thing to do is you've got to drive value for the engineer or the operator. If they see value in monitoring and maintaining those sensors and being able to better perform with their equipment that's right in front of them, then other people in the organization can start leveraging that data. I often look at analytics as what I call secondhand data. You're absolutely right. Don't just throw all the data into a big data lake out there. This is the new concept, and go try and find something. Start with empowering the people in that journey of driving efficiency, at their local level. And then as a result, maybe there's some business questions, and always start with a business question. What are you trying to do? I'll give you one example of analytics. They can actually, it was a big data project. They recognized it was a mining operation, and they recognized that they had a large issue with certain trucks seem to be failing more regularly in this mine. And these trucks are like $5 to $10 million. And when they fail in a line, it costs about $1 million a day in lost production. They employed advanced analytics, but the fact was the data was already available from the trucks because the maintenance engineers were looking at the trucks on a regular basis. Using that secondhand data, they put it into a big data lake and did some big data analytics. The funny thing was that they were asking the question, which trucks and potentially why. What they eventually got down to from big data was that they could identify the trucks and they could identify their routes. And they said it was something to do with the route that was causing the trucks to fail more often and have higher maintenance. The reality was the engineers had to actually go tell them why that route was particularly an issue. And the most crazy use case, it was the engineer said, well, there's big bumps. There's big dips and bumps that they have to slow and accelerate for. And it was something so simple that big data couldn't tell you the exact answer. The engineer had to actually go back and tell the data scientist, oh, yeah, that's because they have to brake and go over speed bumps. So that mining operation, to reduce maintenance, they did a simple thing. They just flattened the road. And that had a huge impact. But it's sort of, it is a big cultural. You have to start driving value. You have to engage people together. And the last thing we should be doing is just throwing data in a bin without any context or rational reason for why we're doing it.
Well, so that and there's a question here, but let me follow that really quickly with your point, because I think you referred to sort of the automation step as the holy grail. So how do you do that? I mean, this seems to me to be a huge leap based upon that example you just gave.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's full circle here. Once you got enough data, you can understand the system, you can model the system, and then you can do what we call sort of prescriptive advice to the engineer. The engineers will wake up every day and they'll typically have a dashboard, some interfaces that they monitor and they control their operations. But having got to a point where you understand the model and that you can actually predict or tell someone what to do, the key there is being able to build that back into the process. And that's really just going back and putting, it could be mashups, it can be extending applications that they deal with every day to build that back into their workflow. But the key here is you've got to build any prescriptive modeling into the workflow of the existing engineer to be successful. If they're looking at their screen and it says, you need to turn this off, you're going to overheat, or I recommend turning this down 5% to drive efficiency, you need to put it into the tools that they use every day.
Yeah, and so that's part of the cultural and a change you talked about. I mean, this is. Let's see, Jackie, did you hear back from? Have we had anything back from them on what's going on with our platform here and why these slides aren't working? Okay.
I'm actually going through the process.
Okay.
So
what there's a question here. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Jeremy, there's a question here from Carlos. Is Central America in this matter? And so let me put into perspective. OSIsoft has a lot of business in South America through Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Argentina. There's going on. Where is it being deployed? We're seeing this in the energy sector, in grid operators, utilities, transmission lines. We're seeing a lot of oil and gas in transmission in Mexico and oil and gas. Cemex is actually a South American company that we have here. So we'll see a lot of this going on. I'd say the biggest areas of investment we're seeing right now is power generation, distribution, and utilities. There's a lot of changes happening in the energy sector. Renewables are creating a lot of issues in being able to manage grid stability. We see water as another one. I mean, the quality of water and maintaining water and optimizing water. We've had some recent droughts in Brazil, for instance. How do you make sure that you efficiently use that water?
And it looks like we actually we've been able to recover the slides. Speaking of Cemex, so hopefully this will work, and we'll let you finish. And again, apologies, Dominic, for that strange outing there on this the slide deck. So you were talking about the Cemex example. I'm sorry if you want to pick that back up again and finish the formal presentation.
Yeah. So this goes back to really the last mile of efficiency in the operation using digital transformation. So just moving on from this slide, this isn't easy. I mean, it is a journey, and it's understanding what you need to do right to leverage this. So Cemex is a great example. They were pulling data in from 70 different sites. They were spending almost 744 hours processing the data before they could do advanced analytics. Time series data is challenging. It's missing data. It starts at different points. It's huge volumes, high fidelity. It's not consistent between one stream and the next. And this is why they were spending 744 hours here. And really, the key in managing advanced data and combining data from multiple sources, not just one sensor, multiple sensors and different types of sensors, is really being able to handle the time series data. So as you're looking to invest in digital technologies and analytics, think about, here are 7 things that are essential to success. One is a system that connects to multiple sources of information. There is a huge amount of different protocols, different formats. There's no standards in the industry right now. Not just handling the volume, but it's the fidelity, the frequency of the data. If you've got a high rotating a piece of equipment, for instance, E-Type is a dam on the border of Paraguay and Brazil. They have high velocity turbines there. You need data down to the sub-second, 100th of a second. If you see a vibration in there that peaks through, you need that data to be able to identify you're looking at a potential catastrophic failure. Next perspective is, putting meaning to data. With so much streams of data, how do you actually take a stream and add context so any engineer can understand it? If a data scientist sees it, they can understand it. If an analytical scientist sees it, they can see it. But it's not just understanding the stream, but the context. A pump is not the same as another pump. Is it in a different field? Is it a different model of pump? Is it pushing water? Is it pushing air? So understanding and having context around how it fits in the process is critical. And the final bit is really essential for being able to compare, analyze, and contrast the data. Time series data, they have events. So say a valve opens, one valve might open at time point 10 seconds, another valve in a different system 50 seconds. You have to start to be able to align that data because it doesn't naturally line up. And you need tools and systems to process that. The final thing is just really the frequency of sampling. Every system will push data at a different sampling. And then if you want to compare, one valve opening to another valve opening, for instance, you have to make sure that the complete data is there. Most BI tools, Power BI, Spotlight, Tableau, if you're pushing data into Hadoop or IBM Bluemix, for example, you've got to align the data. They cannot fill the data in for you. So these are some of the big headaches that Cemex was seeing as they were trying to address this data and turn it into something that could do advanced analytics. And the final step of this, and this goes back to what you were saying, Jeremy, which was really driving a culture and a use. And when you look at that time series data, it's not just about trying to collect data for a data scientist, but making sure that when you're handling time series data across the organization, you provide an environment that the engineer in real time can monitor their assets, their equipment. When they have a problem, you want that engineer with so many streams of data, you cannot create views of these with the IT department. You've got to have an engineer that can go drill down. I'll take an example. The whole of the power grid for California is run by an independent state operator. They have a 160-foot screen with over 500,000 streams of data coming into that. There is no way you can create a view for every single one. Instead, you create a summary. When an engineer sees a problem, they help themselves and drill down and extract all this historical data that the engineers are on. They're able to push that out for doing future predictions. So the California grid operator actually predicts the day before the power they're going to need to buy from all the different power generation facilities. But this is essential as you're looking at this time series, this new IoT sources of data. We need tools that add context and process and manage the data and then deliver it to whatever application you need, whether it's real-time monitoring, whether it's exploratory diagnostics, or it's advanced analytics out there. So there's this big shiny object of analytics, but going back, you've got to create a culture where everyone gets value and everyone can use that data, not just a single system to support data lakes. So, with that in mind here, this is Cemex. Cemex actually put in an infrastructure that allowed them to do everything we showed previously. And what was taking them 744 hours now takes them 4 minutes. This was just the advantage of literally going from months and months of data management and manipulation to literally minutes now to do some of the advanced analytics that they need to do. So a fun use case here, picking up on beer again. You're starting to see a trend in what I like. But Deschutes Brewery was a great example of leveraging analytics, cloud, IoT technology. In the brewing process, typically you have these big batch fermentation vessels. At the end of fermentation, there's a byproduct, it's an acyl product, and it has a buttery popcorn type taste. And that affects the quality of the beer. And traditionally what they used to do was try and monitor until completion. And when they didn't see any of this metabolite that's produced in the fermentation process in there, they stopped fermentation. Well, what they did is they had enough data coming from their sensors to go use Microsoft Cortana Intelligence. It's an advanced analytics environment based in Azure, Microsoft Azure. And they were able to start predicting based on the first few data points through a fermentation run. And so now they take a few samples early on in the fermentation, and they can predict when this acyl metabolite is going to be removed from the system out of natural fermentation process. And the result of this is they're saving up to 48 hours per run, no longer using human judgment, but actually prescribing back, you can finish this run 48 hours sooner because of what we're seeing from the early insights and the prediction of when this run will finish. So, good example of just that final part of operational efficiency, that last mile, driven not by human intelligence or real-time monitoring, but driven by predictive, prescriptive analytics. So I want to start wrapping up here and really sort of getting into, there is a challenge ahead, and apologies, graphics come out a little bad here. But today you have lots of different automation control system vendors out there. You have a whole new set of sensors coming out here. You've got all these remote and mobile assets that are getting smarter. Your data management could go back decades. You're going to have more data in more formats, in more locations than you ever dreamed of. Data is key. It's really valuable, but we can get drowned if we're not careful. So, our advice to us here is really think about a strategy to not just leverage the current automation and control systems, but embrace some of this new opportunity to remotely and monitor, put new sensors in. Think about how can you put an environment together where you can connect all your sources, you can put context around that data, and then deliver the data wherever it's needed. Whether it's for an engineer that wants to do real-time monitoring, whether it's a data scientist that wants to do analytics, or whether it's a vendor or a maintenance engineer from a third party that wants to see your assets. Key here is putting in a strategy that's going to connect, manage, and present a trusted source of quality data to whoever needs it in real time. And as you think about that, it's looking at a data infrastructure, an approach that will scale. One thing that IoT is showing us is the volume and the diversity, and I just show some examples from customers here. DTE, that use case I showed, they have 3 million customers and 27 million streams of data coming off their systems. Got to invest in systems that are going to handle the volume. Variety, EON, they have 310,000 streams of data, but get this, it's 250 different formats and 140 different locations. Having systems that deal with the variety as well as the volume. And then velocity, set point, they look at frequency vibrations. They're taking 400,000 events a second per stream. Being able to capture, store, mine that data is critical. The good news is there is tools to do it. My reflection is think about the strategy. Embrace IoT, embrace the data you've got, help your people go through change, understand the value and how it's going to help them. But think about a strategy that's going to help you manage, share, and distribute the information. The question is, do you want to be the digital prey or do you want to be the digital predator? And hopefully after this presentation, you're thinking about how you can be the predator. So with that, I will thank everyone. Apologies for the inconvenience in the slides early on, and we'll be happy to take questions.
No, thank you so much, Dominic, and for sure, apologies on the that momentary. We did have a nice session of Q&A there. We're almost at the top of the hour. I do want to open it up for anyone who has any other questions for Dominic before we wrap up here. And really appreciate that, Dominic, walking us through and what you described as the hype cycle. And it seems like, you know, in terms of the continuum, we have a long way to go in some ways, but on the other hand, it's amazing what's happened already. I just a reminder, folks, if you do want to have a question, there's the toolbar here to use. Otherwise, we will we'll make this recording available for everyone. So, well, I don't want to keep everyone here. So, Dominic, thank you again, Dominic John from OSIsoft. Really appreciate your insights and for joining us today. Apologies for some of the graphical issues and the platform issues, but that's okay. We're going to keep working on this as part of the broader digital transformation, right? And hopefully what's different today and tomorrow will be webinars without any interruptions or any glitches. But that's okay. Thanks again, Dominic.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.